Hi everyone, it's Susie here, Crypto Granny. I hope you're all well. The date's the 25th of February 2022 and the time, Melbourne time, is 18:10 p.m, 6:10 p.m. And I have to say it's all about Russia invading the Ukraine today. It certainly was about that yesterday. It seems almost inconceivable in the year 2022 that we have war again, and Russia's threatening the whole stability of the world, to be perfectly honest with you. I just cannot believe this, that people have learnt nothing from war, seriously. And the poor people of the Ukraine, seriously, my heart goes out to them. It's just terrible. From what I can see, about 170 people have already been killed. Soldiers and civilians, an apartment block has been damaged, blown up. There's been several explosions in the Ukrainian capital of Kiev. The Russian officials are very concerned about Russia carrying out, the Ukrainian officials are very concerned about Russia carrying out missile attacks on the city. The Russians have seized the control of Chernobyl complex, which was the site of the world's worst nuclear disaster. I think that was in 1986. Now the West are putting on new sanctions on Russia, including acid freeze on banks and literally, all sorts of things. And this has been imposed from, Australia through to Brussels and Europe and the US. President Vladimir Putin still defends the invasion of Russia to the Ukraine, and it's absolute garbology. There's been no evidence that the Ukraine has invaded Russia. As I said, this is exactly the same as pre-Nazi Germany with Hitler. 1938, the Sudetenland of Czechoslovakia. People, look up your history because it's the same story. Hitler said that he was protecting the Germans in the Sudetenland of Czechoslovakia, and then he had a full-scale invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1938, and the rest is history. He caused World War II, and, of all accounts, about 50 million people died, and obviously the genocide of the Jewish people to top that off as well. So this is very serious, clearly. We've seen that, the UK, France, and a lot of people have been giving donations in aid to the Ukrainians, but there's been hundreds of explosions around the city and around the ports. The Russians have been trying to cut off all their infrastructure, all this sort of thing, and it's really, very, very worrying, I have to say. NATO did have a meeting, and obviously they're having another one today to vote on a resolution draft. But, Russia's basically said if the West, invades or gets involved, this, it's going to be a shocker, right? It could even, lead to a world war, and no one wants that. And the people to watch are certainly China. The Chinese, they're good allies of the Russians. They've been forging relationships for years, and China has not condemned Vladimir Putin's attack on the Ukraine. China has pretty much refused to condemn him, and just says instead, let's have some restraint by all parties. But they haven't criticised Putin's attack, which is a bit of a worry. Okay. I mean, also the market is worried that China could invade Taiwan. They've always seen Taiwan as their own country, and this could give, China the reason to invade Taiwan. Just like we saw, in World War II, the Japanese invading Pearl Harbor once Hitler got moving. So it is a bit scary, I have to say. Apparently the Russian oligarchs and, all the Russian accounts in Western countries are being closed down. Obviously, people are being focused on. But the thing is, there's also speak that, the Russians might avoid all these SWIFT sanctions and everything else by using cryptocurrency. And that makes a lot of sense, honestly. And apparently the Russian oligarchs are already using cryptocurrency. So that is not surprising that they're doing that. Also, the international banks are looking at the impact of the Russian-Ukraine invasion. Obviously, they're very worried about nuclear conflict. We did see markets crater yesterday early up, sell the rumour, and then we saw buy the fact. So, at one stage, the Dow was off 600 points, and then it came screaming back. And we saw Bitcoin get down below around 34,601, which is pretty much a double bottom, and then came back to 38,000 odd. So, yeah, very, very scary. UBS Group had triggered margin calls and some of the wealthy management clients that they have in terms of Russian bonds and collateral for their portfolios. And certainly Russian bonds last night sold off about 300 basis points, which is a lot. And certainly the ruble just collapsed, which is not surprising. All this going on, you had the Fed saying they're probably going to still raise rates, but the UK was looking at potentially raising rates, and now they're sitting on their hands because you just don't know how far this is going to go. Again, not good. But coupled with that, we do see COVID rising quite dramatically as well. COVID rose about 1.5 million for new cases around the world. And we see that in Hong Kong, thousands of restaurants have been shut down because of COVID, right? They're trying to eradicate COVID. It's been the toughest curbs in the world. And cases are rising in China and Singapore as well. And the United Arab Emirates, Ireland, and Saudi Arabia as well. So, we've got all this sort of stuff going on at the moment. So let's look at the stats in terms of crypto markets and some of the news, and then we'll look at the fiat markets as well. If we look at the stats, according to Live Coin Watch at the moment, basically market cap was 1.758. At one stage last night, it got down to 1.5 trillion. So it's currently 1.75 trill. Volume is very high today. It's up about 76%. It's at 91.73 bill. Liquidity is high today at 5.119 bill, and Bitcoin dominance is 41.8%. When I looked at this, Bitcoin was at 38,746. From its lows. It's up about 11%. Ethereum's at 2631, up 12% as well. XRP's at 70 cents, up at 9% or so, and Binance is up about 10% at 363. So very, very interesting. But we did see many liquidations yesterday and the day before. Massive liquidations. The day before, 155,000 traders were liquidated. Whether they were long or short, they got liquidated. 473 million was lost in the market. And the liquidations were across Bitcoin, 152 mil, Ethereum, 127, XRP, 11 mil, Litecoin, 5 mil, and many others. If we look at the liquidations today from last night, we see another 437 million liquidations and 94,000 traders got liquidated, mainly across Ethereum, Bitcoin, Luna, Sol, XRP, AVAX, and a few others. So it's been a very bad couple of months for traders, I have to tell you that. Very, very bad indeed. Also, when you look at the futures, we still see futures trading under the physical coin. So, for example, Bitcoin's at 3874 and Bitcoin futures are still around 38,505. And that future matures, the last trading down that is the 25th, which is today, and it matures on the 28th. And it's still trading under the physical curve, which is really interesting. Also, Ethereum is trading under the physical curve. The futures on Ethereum, which mature on the 25th, 28th, is at 2615, and yet the physical curve of Ethereum is 2631. So the physical curve is actually holding up very, very well. What that tells us is people are very short on the futures. They're still short on the futures, okay, because they're selling futures more than the physical curve, which is quite interesting. If you look at the options position, we do see a lot of options maturing today, particularly with Bitcoin. And basically the value is 445,919 still on the put side, and on the call side 99 million. For Ethereum it's 137 million on the put side, and on the call side it's 66 million. So people are pretty short generally, as we see. Now obviously with Russia going into the Ukraine soil, Russia's credit default swaps were wider by something like 500 basis points, which is huge, right? The risk, obviously because Russian bonds collapsed, and if you're a holder of Russian bonds, you're going to try and get insurance on the credit default side. Otherwise, you're going to lose your money. Russian bonds got incredibly sold off last night, and I wouldn't like to be holding Russian bonds because you're going to lose, you pay $100 for a bond or more, you're going to actually lose your money for sure. It'll be down like 25-30%. Apparently the Russian military now control several airfields, in the Ukraine, and can funnel more forces into the Ukraine. They've had military action in the east, south, and the centre. And, there's heavy, medium bombers, missiles of all sorts. This is almost just incredible. Seriously, people, I just can't believe this. They've launched, they were saying they're only going to be in 2 regions, but it looks like they've launched a full-scale invasion of the Ukraine. And honestly, it's just terrible. Also, Russians in Russia that, against the war have been literally, rounded up by the police and put in jail. So there's clearly no freedom over there either. And, basically people are feeling this is a declaration of war against the whole of Europe. I mean, I'd imagine that Poland would be very, very scared at the moment, Estonia and those sort of countries, because Poland's always had a belief that Russia could invade them again, and that they'd be pretty worried. Certainly a lot of the Ukrainians are going to Poland, they're going to Finland and anywhere just to get out of the Ukraine, because this could get worse and worse, okay? So, all Western states are trying to, stitch Russia up so that they can't do anything. Economically, the last situation in 2014, it cost them about $50 billion. So, but the problem is Russia is not a member of OPEC, and the country is a major export of oil. Okay, so they export billions and billions of oil, crude petroleum, refined petroleum, and petroleum gas every year. And JP Morgan's come out and said oil could reach $150 per barrel, like we had the oil crisis in the 70s. Also, US gas prices could go quite high because Russia also exports gas. And then there's that big gas line from Russia to the Ukraine they can cut off, and to Germany. So it's not a great story. With oil around 110 or 150, it means that CPI could get to easily 15-20%, and I really believe that's what CPI is, Consumer Price Index, year on year, which is going to be a definite, negative to US consumers for sure, when it's costing you so much to fill your car up. Also, Russia's a huge exporter of fertilizer, nitrogenous fertilizer to fertilize crops, and Europe and the US import Russian fertilizers. So this will have an effect on the North American growing season for all sorts of food product and agriculture. We've already got shortage of food, real shortage of food. Food prices have been going up 35% per annum year on year. And honestly, this will mean that there'll be massive crop shortages and higher food prices. So, this all comes into it. And the basic thing is, if the Fed rate rises as well, consumers have got higher petrol prices, they've got higher food prices. It's just going to be a nightmare for people. It's, all these high prices are like 3 or 4 rate hikes. So the Fed needs to go easy here. Matter of fact, the Fed should not even be rate hiking, because higher fuel prices at the pump or food is like a rate hike to the consumer, okay? Let me just get a glass of water, won't be a sec. And all these increased prices will have a negative effect on the US growth domestic product performing and going up, right? Because you need growth in an economy to create jobs, right? And coupled with that, the COVID pandemic is rising about 1.5 million cases every day, right? And it's still around, and we still have Omicron. So, I really think the Fed needs to look very clearly and not be aggressive with rate hikes, because they will kill the middle classes in America who borrow money for their cars, for their houses. Their disposable income is just squeezed to the hilt. And with this geopolitical conflict, if America gets involved in this war, it's going to cost people a fortune, right? Not a great situation. And also, as I said before, you really need to keep an eye out for what China is doing. China has always wanted to go back into Taiwan. They believe, that Taiwan is theirs. Again, Taiwan are the biggest suppliers of semiconductors for everything, right? And if Taiwan gets taken over by China, we're going to have 2, big, huge, giant countries being aggressive and all sorts of things. Another thing, Taiwan accounted for over 60% of the global semiconductor market and semiconductors used in the production of cell phones, cars, medical devices, and pretty much all tech. And notwithstanding that, as I said, energy in Europe is pretty much reliant on Russia for its natural gas. So Germany announced that it would shut off the Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline in response to Russia's aggression towards to the Ukraine. And that's going to make energy prices in Europe out of control, particularly when it is so cold in Europe at the moment. Dutch TTF gas futures surged 60% overnight, a price not seen since 2005. And German power contracts exploded 42%, according to Stockwitz. And Stockwitz brought out some very good reporting material today. Thank you very much, Stockwitz. So this is a pretty scary sort of thing. Plus, China courts came out and said anyone that's raising funds via crypto from the public will be sentenced to jail. They've really, shown crackdown in terms of crypto to control their own people. They've interpreted this as you raise money, you go to jail. That's pretty much it. Pantera came out and they've said, honestly, we might see some selling pressure because it's the US tax season. I think on tax day is the April of 18th, but they said the crypto market is a buy. And I agree with that. The market is cheap, people. Cheap as chips. Cheap. And, as I said before, I know this sounds ridiculous, but war is good for risk markets. Unfortunately, it is, but that's just the way it is, okay? So, when I looked at this market last night, Bitcoin was around, 35,405. It got to a low of 34,363, and it's bounced all the way back to that 38,700-ish. So, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens going forward. That's for sure. So clearly in the market when it was selling off, there was just nowhere to hide at all, because that's what was happening. All the, Russia's seizing retail deposits everywhere, to get literally their money out of bank accounts before all these SWIFT sanctions were brought in. But the Western worlds have really responded very quickly to sanctions with Russia, but it's not going to be great because, the West and Europe really rely on gas from Russia, petrol, and lots of things. So, and as I said, agricultural fertilizer as well. So it's going to be a pretty hard story going forward for people, particularly in the US. Now let's talk about crypto news. Crypto lending platform Celsius is committing 30 million of wrapped ether to Maple Finance's liquidity pool. Maple representative said the DeFi pool will be worth $1 billion next year, and that's good for them. And also, Maple's originated over 768 million in loans and lent to over 25 institutional borrowers. This is a pretty big client for Celsius, I have to say, a very, very big client, and that's great for them. Maple is described as being a decentralized institutional debt marketplace that bridges the gap between traditional and decentralized finance by allowing institutions to borrow crypto from liquidity pools funded by DeFi investors and managed by experienced credit analysts. I'd have to look at that. I don't particularly like DeFi. It always seems to get hacked through smart contracts and that sort of thing. Also, there was a report by BNY Mellon Wealth Managers. They surveyed a lot of wealthy family offices, people that have, incredible high net worth. They said that there was about 200 participants, 56 single-family offices and 144 multi-family offices with billions in cash and investments across United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, South Africa, Italy, Germany, India and Brazil. And they basically said that, 60-odd% of them would definitely be interested in investing in crypto. BNY Mellon Wealth Management has over 30 billion in total client assets, and the firm is definitely looking to get into crypto because of their high net worth clients. Also, the Stock Exchange of Thailand is getting ready to launch a digital asset exchange, which is great for them. The Federal Bureau of Investigation issued a request for a proposal. Objection was the need for state-of-art tracing and analytical software licenses to detect criminals' unlawful usage of cryptocurrency. They're really coming down on, unlawful use of cryptocurrency. According to the Criminal Investigation Division, money laundering, forfeiture, bank fraud, and all this sort of thing, with the usage of digital asset and unlawful use, will be monitored by these by the FBI and this criminal division, and they're looking for people to give them the state-of-art tracing and analytical software to be able to detect these criminals. Also, what else we got here? Kyrgyzstan. No, we'll miss that one. Trondeo long-term plan to promote the mass adoption of blockchain technology. Trondeo and BitTorrent chain announced the launch of Tron Grand Hackathon. Excuse me. And that started obviously February 14th and will end on the 7th of March. Milan, Italy. Econium, a crypto investment fund specialising in digital assets projects, promoted decentralisation, spearheaded the effort to support the infrastructure of Web3. Also, we have $34 million to build custom hardware for new AWS of crypto services from infrastructure. So we see all these investments continue constantly, okay? Nothing stops these investments. The leading British financial markets infrastructure, London Stock Exchange Group, will acquire a trading tech solution provider, Tora, for $325 million. And this is to strengthen the presence of the London Stock Exchange Group presence in the cryptocurrency sector. All the large stock exchanges in the world are going to go into crypto. Seriously, all of them. Also the Bank of New York, meanwhile, Mellon has announced a partnership with blockchain data platform Chain Analysts to help track and analyse cryptocurrency. Now, Ben Mellon, as I said, has a lot of high net worth clients, but they're also the largest custodian bank in the world, and they oversee, listen to this people, oversee 46.7 trillion in assets. 46.7 trillion in assets. That is massive, right? And Bank of New York Mellon has has now got a partnership with Chain Analysis, which is fantastic. So all good. Now, Xinhua News Agency, a local news outlet, reports the online pyramid scheme, which was called Ripple Union Pay Community, operated through a mobile app with the same name. This was illegal, and they were just going off Ripple stuff, and it was actually illegal. Okay. Also, what else we got here? The Financial Conduct Authority of the FCA of the United Kingdom has given out 200 licenses, and as I said yesterday, Uphold got one of those licenses, and they're big supporters of XRP. Crypto exchange FTX has appointed fashion and beauty entrepreneur Lauren Remington Platt as its head of global luxury partnerships in a planned bid to expand sponsorship opportunities within luxury brands. Also, Elon Musk is fighting the SEC. So now Ripple have another supporter. The SEC was looking into his Tesla dealings and also his brother, I think his name's Kim Lud or something. His Tesla deals as well. So now Ripple have another ally who's also fighting the SEC, and that's Elon Musk, which is a great story for Ripple. If we look at the most searched assets overnight in the market for coin market cap, it was Magic Ethereum Money, Catgirl, Meta NFT, Coco Swap, and Meta Ruffy. If we go to top trending assets, Shiba Dodge, Bitcoin Cash, Gala, Shiba Inu, and BNB. If we look at 24-hour hot searches worldwide, Telos, Everdome, Smooth Love Potion, Cellframe, Fountain, Bitcoin, and Terra. If we go to Luna Lush, the social media was really focused on Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tezos, PancakeSwap, Dodge, Shiba Inu, Baby Dogecoin, Cardano, Rarible, SafeMoon, and Casper Network. So let's have a look at the equity market, guys and girls. Now, yesterday when all this stuff was going off with Russia and the Ukraine, the Nasdaq was down 1.1, the Russell down 1.2, the S&P was down 1.4, and the Dow was down 1.9 at 32,497. And every area of the market was being smashed. Every area in the market, right? And then lo and behold, the market comes screaming back and, closed pretty much at much higher levels. So currently today, we've got the Dow at 33,204, up 0.2%. We've got the Nasdaq up 2.6%, Up 3.3% at 13,959, and the S&P at 1.4%. The VIX, the CBO index, VIX, got up to 37, and it's currently at 31. So the markets came screaming back in technology, communications, consumer discretionary, real estate, industrial, utilities, and healthcare. Everything else sold off: materials, energy, financials, and consumer staples. And we saw that Bitcoin and crypto markets came back as well. But what's interesting is the Russian debt curve sold off dramatically. 2-year debt off 289 basis points, 7-year debt off 295 basis points. And we saw credit to swap spreads move out by 500 basis points. The US 10-year bond rate is at 1.97, fairly stable. The 5-year is at 1.855. The 1-year is at 1.09. We did see the US yen at 115.21, Aussies 71.98. But when we look at the US against Russian ruble, the Russian ruble got hit big time. It's at 84.97. The Ukraine also against US is now 29.82. And we see other emerging market FX coming down as well. The Turkish lira to the US is 14.07. Now, when I was in Turkey, it was around 13, so that's underperforming as well. If we look at the commodity markets, clearly and understandably so, ethanol, WTI, Brent crude, heating oil, natural gas, gasoline, all went up. We've seen that, and it's going to get worse, and we know that. Gold came off a little bit. It was at one stage 1944. It's now at 1916. Silver's at 24.37. But what we do see is coal, aluminium going up. We also see wheat going up, corn going up, live cattle going up, all sorts of things, because there's going to be no fertilizer, right? Because Russia exported a lot of fertilizer. We do see emerging market debt spreads falling off, and equity markets. And with that, as I said, coronavirus cases were 431.985 million overnight, and yesterday they were 430.475, which is an increase of 1.5 mil. So it's a very interesting market at the moment, but ultimately I'm still very bullish the cryptocurrency market. And I do believe the cryptocurrency market will be much higher at the end of the year, people. And, we get assessed on yearly profitability. And I do believe it, because this will force the Russians and even the Ukrainians to use cryptocurrency, because all the banks are shut. The Russians can't get access to their money. And I do believe this will also be a catalyst for them to be using cryptocurrency. And that's the problem when you're in a war situation, all the banks get shut. If you have cryptocurrency, you can actually protect yourself and get out of the situation very quickly. You're not constrained by governments and banks and everything. And that's the whole idea of crypto. It's peer-to-peer. It brings freedom to every consumer. And I think with this will be a real catalyst for crypto. And don't forget, we're still early in this market. There's only 200 million people in this crypto market out of 7.9 billion people. And like Pantera said, this market will decouple from the fiat markets, which are very expensive, equity and bond markets, and the cryptocurrency market has new technology. It's amazing, and it will just go higher and higher. You do have to buy a specific cryptocurrency because, as I said, there's about 17,700 cryptocurrency coins and tokens, and most of them garbology, and we would buy a handful, about 40 to 60, which we know everything about. Anyway, guys and girls, thank you very much. If you'd like to get my Patreon, please do, and I'll talk to you potentially over the weekend. Thank you, and have a great weekend. Thank you.